All right, let's tackle this Djed pillar, okay? The Djed, it means endurance and stability. You see it paired often with the symbol of priesthood power and dominion, indicating that power being exercised through all generations of time, forever, right? See, we often find a Djed pillar being raised. It was laying down, but then raised up. That's a whole ceremony. That's a whole ritual that they went through. So this is death and resurrection is what Nibley is saying, right? Descent and ascent. There are multiple approaches we can take to arrive at similar interpretations. Again, according to Professor Nibley, the Djed column, whether representing the backbone of Osiris or the four pillars of the world, or raised at the coronation to denote the stability of the kingdom, it is the one thing that assures eternal permanence for the earthly order of things. When we see really detailed representations of the Djed in carvings and paintings, it's clear it's a bundle of greenery, okay? Most say bunches of bound up papyrus stems. Some Egyptologists say it represented the familiar last sheaf of the old harvest, carried over into the rebirth rites of the new year. These should be now familiar themes for you, right? Harvest, grain, the new year, as relating to rebirth. And the papyrus is the plant sacred to Hathor. I hope you remember, right? She's the cow that walks among the papyrus marshes. So that's the same motif we see in the Field of Reeds, the ritual reed booths, the privacy, protection, and nurturing of a mother or a companion. The papyrus marsh is where Horus was protected and nursed. At Thebes, the Djed column of Osiris was raised for Sokar, and the god takes on various forms as he passes through different regions. Well, if it represents rebirth, we'd expect Sokar to fit in there, right? Because it's Osiris dying and being resurrected as the glorious Horus. So Sokar then being that intermediate stage between the two. That's why we find rituals at the solstice of setting up the green sheaf of papyrus. Osiris is the green man, right? It marks his birth or resurrection and return to, remember, green, fresh, renewed, new life, right? That's that waj, green, right? In Egyptian. Something you'll hear all the time is that the Djed stands for the backbone of Osiris. And, I have no cause to argue that. It can certainly be used that way. We find these pillars depicted as Osiris all the time. They'll have arms or heads or eyes or be dressed in clothes. They'll have ritual sashes around their waist, holding insignia of kingship, okay, and so on. So, like I said, they'll be laying down and then raised up by the aid of the two ladies, just as Osiris was. And in the text surrounding these images, the Djed will usually be explicitly equated with Osiris being raised. Particularly when the pillar is personified, the Djed being raised expresses the same thing as the movement from Osiris to Horus, right? It's elevation to a whole new level of existence. Well, the Djed can also be shown as a ladder, exactly like Jacob's ladder or the tree of life. It reaches up to the heavens. It's a fiery conduit connecting higher and lower realms upon which beings of light can ascend and descend. Speaking broadly, it can represent the big picture of eternal progression, moving up that ladder, not just once to leave a world and attain the heavens, but to climb progressively through the eternities, back to that far-reaching stability we referenced before, right? But if it's progression, well, of course, that perfectly fits with Osiris. Sure, it could be his spine. He is the embodiment of that principle, right? He is progression. He leads the way through the progression, right? Just as energy can move up the spine, like marrow in the bone, he is down here, the lying Djed, down for the count until he triumphs. He is raised with the help of Isis and reconnected with the heavens in his newly adorned, glorified form. Like here in the shrine of Tutankhamun, where Osiris's body is literally the central pillar in a great temple. He's the vertical axis that spans worlds, you see? But I have to reiterate that while the Djed is most strongly tied to Osiris, it can also represent his mother. It can represent Hathor. When we encounter those particularly well-carved and detailed examples of it as a bundle of papyrus stems, especially when the texts beside them are consulted, then it takes us back to the Queen of Heaven. Henri Frankfurt said, "These texts corroborate our view that the Djed pillar represents a mother goddess, notably Hathor, pregnant with a king or god." Sometimes the Egyptians go so far as literally calling Hathor the female Djed pillar. That's something you can find at Dendera, where she's called that. So it's absolutely a symbol shared by her. Of course it is, right? She's linked to trees and flowers and gardens left and right. In the very earliest times, she's worshipped in trees. We've talked about that. We've even got Osiris concealed in a daggum pillar, right? And how that alluded to the goddess's embrace. So she's inextricably linked with the tree of life. She's one of its creators, one who protects it, one who grants access to it. Yet the idea being expressed with the lying Djed column is that something has been broken in relation to the tree. The connection that was intended has been severed, so that it requires correction, setting the pillar back up, reconnecting to the tree. In the Book of the Dead, the initiate Ani describes his life on earth as a place apart, cut off from the tree. He says, "I have been in the place where the acacia tree does not grow, and I have spoken with the god Seth." So he's been to the place where Seth rules, where he must be confronted, right? A place without access to the acacia tree of life. A concept we'll visit more in future courses is the Djed pillar's relation to the world pillar, or the Earth's axis. To quote Professor Nibley one last time, he says the Djed is the most sacred relic of the previous world, the symbol of transition from age to age and from creation to creation. So like good students of Egypt, let's not get too linear, right, in thinking that the Djed equals such and such. It depends on the context.